Tonight, America stands at a crossroads as 7 more states abolish concealed carry permits, marking a pivotal moment in the nation's ongoing debate over gun rights and public safety. These changes are not happening in isolation. They reflect a broader movement sweeping across the country, one that is fundamentally reshaping how Americans think about self-defense, personal responsibility, and the role of government in regulating firearms. With these new laws, a majority, 36 states, now allow citizens to carry a concealed handgun in public without a permit or mandatory training. For millions, this means the ability to protect themselves and their families without bureaucratic hurdles. But for others, it raises urgent questions about oversight and accountability. This sweeping change, known as constitutional carry, is hailed by some as a restoration of Second Amendment rights, a return to the founders' vision of individual liberty and self-reliance. Supporters see it as a necessary correction to what they view as years of government overreach. Yet critics warn that removing permit requirements could make it easier for dangerous individuals to carry firearms, increasing the risk of violence in public spaces. They argue that without basic training or background checks, communities may become less safe, not more secure. The debate has moved from state houses to Congress, where a federal reciprocity bill could force all states to recognize the most permissive gun laws nationwide. This proposal has sparked intense discussion, with lawmakers and citizens alike questioning how best to balance state autonomy with national standards. Supporters argue that permits are an unnecessary barrier to self-defense, especially for law-abiding citizens who simply want to protect themselves. They believe that responsible gun ownership should not be limited by paperwork or government approval. Opponents, however, see permits and training as vital safeguards, tools that help ensure only those who are prepared and vetted can carry concealed weapons. They worry that without these measures, the risks to public safety could outweigh the benefits. The outcome of this debate will shape the rules of public life and personal security for generations to come, affecting how Americans interact in schools, workplaces, and neighborhoods across the country. This is more than a policy shift. It's a test of how America balances freedom and safety in a rapidly changing society. The choices made now will echo through the years, influencing not just laws, but the very fabric of American life. As the story unfolds, one thing is clear: the decisions made today will have lasting consequences for our communities, our families, and the nation's future. The right to carry firearms in public has evolved dramatically since the nation's founding. In the earliest days of the United States, carrying weapons was not only common but often considered necessary for personal protection and survival, especially on the frontier. Firearms were a part of daily life, and there were few formal restrictions on how or where they could be carried. As American society became more urbanized in the 19th and early 20th centuries, concerns about public safety led many states and cities to pass laws restricting the concealed carry of firearms. These laws were often strict, and permits to carry a concealed weapon were rarely granted except in cases of clear and present danger, or for those with political connections or special status. For the average citizen, carrying a concealed firearm was largely out of reach. However, the late 20th century marked a turning point. Pro-gun advocates began to challenge restrictive laws, arguing that the right to self-defense should not be limited by subjective government discretion. This movement led to the rise of shall-issue laws, which required authorities to issue permits to anyone who met objective legal criteria, such as passing a background check and completing training. As a result, millions of Americans gained access to concealed carry permits, and the debate over gun rights intensified nationwide. Landmark Supreme Court decisions, Heller in 2008 and Bruen in 2022, further transformed the legal landscape. These rulings affirmed that the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to possess and carry firearms for self-defense, both inside and outside the home. The court struck down discretionary permit systems that allowed officials to deny permits based on subjective judgment, setting new constitutional standards for gun laws across the country. While states retained some authority to regulate firearms, the Bruen decision energized the constitutional carry movement. Supporters argued that requiring a permit for a constitutional right was unnecessary and even unconstitutional. This movement gained momentum as more states began to adopt laws allowing law-abiding citizens to carry concealed firearms without a permit, often referred to as permitless carry. Over the past decade, the argument for permitless carry has rapidly gained ground. Today, a growing number of states have enacted laws that allow individuals to carry concealed firearms without government-issued permits, reflecting a significant shift in both legal standards and public opinion. The current landscape of concealed carry in America is the result of centuries of evolving laws, landmark court decisions, and ongoing debates about the balance between individual rights and public safety. As the conversation continues, the history of concealed carry remains a powerful example of how American law and society adapt to changing times. With 7 new states joining this month, 36 now allow permitless concealed carry, a dramatic shift in just 5 years. The movement spans diverse regions, reflecting broad political support, especially in Republican-led states. The new laws eliminate previous requirements for applications, fees, and training, making the right to carry nearly universal for legal gun owners. Meanwhile, Congress debates a federal reciprocity bill that could override stricter state laws, letting residents from permitless states carry nationwide. The bill has passed the House but faces a tough Senate battle, with President Trump pledging to sign it if it reaches his desk. The outcome could either unify the nation under permissive standards or preserve the current patchwork of state laws. Permitless carry, allowing individuals to carry concealed firearms without a permit or training, is now the standard in most U.S. states, a dramatic reversal from just a decade ago when only a handful of states had such laws. Over the past 10 years, a wave of legislative changes has swept across the country, transforming the landscape of gun regulation and igniting passionate debate on both sides of the issue. Despite these sweeping legal changes, public opinion polls consistently reveal that a large majority of Americans, including most gun owners, still support requiring permits for concealed carry. Surveys show that people across the political spectrum, from urban centers to rural communities, often express concerns about safety and the need for some level of oversight when it comes to carrying firearms in public spaces. This disconnect between public sentiment and state policy highlights the powerful influence of pro-gun lobbying groups, such as the NRA, and the intensity of the political debate. Lawmakers often face immense pressure from advocacy organizations and constituents, making gun legislation one of the most contentious issues in American politics. When it comes to the impact of permitless carry on public safety, research remains mixed and highly debated. Supporters argue that allowing more law-abiding citizens to carry guns deters crime and empowers individuals to protect themselves. However, several studies suggest that loosening permit requirements may actually lead to an increase in gun violence, accidental shootings, and other public safety risks. For example, a major 2024 study found a 32% rise in gun assaults in states that dropped permit requirements. While these findings have sparked concern among public health experts and gun safety advocates, opponents argue that the data is inconclusive and point to other factors that may influence crime rates, such as economic conditions or policing strategies. Meanwhile, in Congress, the federal reciprocity bill, which would require all states to recognize concealed carry permits issued by any other state, has strong Republican support but faces significant procedural hurdles in the Senate. The debate over this bill reflects the broader national divide on gun policy and the challenge of finding common ground. Ultimately, the fate of national gun policy may rest with a handful of moderate senators, whose votes could determine whether new legislation moves forward or stalls. Their decisions are being closely watched by advocates, lobbyists, and millions of Americans concerned about the future of gun laws. With both sides lobbying intensely and new research emerging almost every month, the stakes in this debate remain incredibly high. As lawmakers weigh the latest data and public opinion, the outcome will shape not only state and federal policy, but also the daily lives and safety of communities across the nation. Permitless carry has changed daily life for police and communities. Without permits, officers can't easily verify if someone carrying a gun is doing so legally, increasing tension and risk during encounters. Major law enforcement groups warn that removing permit systems eliminates a key vetting tool, making it harder to keep guns from dangerous individuals. Gun rights advocates argue that more armed citizens mean greater safety and deterrence, while critics point to research linking permitless carry to higher rates of violence. The proposed federal reciprocity bill is especially controversial, as it would force states to accept out-of-state carriers with no local oversight. The debate centers on whether these changes make communities safer or more vulnerable. Experts remain deeply divided on permitless carry. Gun rights advocates see permits as unconstitutional barriers, arguing that self-defense should not depend on government approval or financial means. They claim that armed citizens are the true first responders and that permitless carry empowers the vulnerable. Opponents, including public health and law enforcement experts, warn that removing permits leads to more accidental shootings and escalated conflicts. They argue that permit requirements ensure responsible gun ownership and that federal reciprocity would undermine local safety standards. The fear is a race to the bottom, where the weakest laws become the national norm. Both sides agree. The stakes for public safety and personal liberty have never been higher. The expansion of permitless carry marks a new era for America, with most states now allowing concealed firearms without a permit. This shift brings new responsibilities for everyone, gun owners and non-owners alike, as public spaces adapt to changing rules. For states with permits, the fight continues, especially as Congress debates federal reciprocity that could override local laws. The moment demands informed, civil dialogue and careful attention to emerging data and real-world outcomes. The debate is about more than policy. It's about the nation's identity, values, and the balance between freedom and security. The choices made today will shape communities for years to come. The future of public safety and personal liberty is being decided right now.